Thank you for joining us for the latest episode of the Secure Connections podcast, brought to you by IotSSA, the Internet of Things Security Services Association. As always, I'm Brian Sherman, Content Director for IotSSA and co-host of today's session. Joining me is Tania Shepard, the renowned channel marketing professional, also my co-host. Hi, Tania.
Hello, everybody. Lovely to be here.
Awesome. And also joining us today is Rob Rae, Vice President of Business Development for Datto. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you very much, Brian. Happy to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to join you guys.
Awesome. Well, it's good to have you on here, too. We've got quite a few things kind of going on in the news I'd like to touch on today. But let's start off with, I think last time I talked to you, caught up with you live, was at ChannelCon, one of the many events you attend. You can't keep up with what you're at these days. I know you're actively involved in CompTIA. So what was your big takeaway from this year's event? I know there was a lot happening.
At ChannelCon, I had a ton. Definitely one of my favorite events. It's one where I find that collectively a lot of the thought leaders, a lot of the industry leaders, a lot of the both channel as well as vendors have an opportunity to kind of get together and discuss kind of what's going on in the market today. It's more so that than it is a traditional trade show. And I think that's why I kind of really appreciate and really like the event is it's just an opportunity for us to connect. Obviously there's thousands of us and, you know, we're all interconnected in this industry we call managed services. And there's very, very few places where we're all at the same place at the same time. And this was kind of it. So for me, it's just more of that. And then when you go into the actual content and the actual event itself, then some of the conversations that we're having there, I mean, they're real thought leadership pieces. And one of the things that I really appreciate and really love about it is the idea that I'm not going there representing Datto, I'm going there representing Rob, you know, and I'm going there because, you know, I'm part of this industry and I'm not a vendor, I'm not an MSP, I'm Rob, and I kind of know a few things that I'm talking about, therefore want to and will talk about them kind of idea. So there's kind of that, and having groups of people in there with no titles, no badges, no anything like that, and being able to talk about today's issues. Again, there's nothing like it in our market, and I just think CompTIA does a phenomenal job at pulling that together. On top of it being one of my kind of real go-to events for the year, won't miss it.
Yeah, I think the networking. I hate to overuse that term because we use networking for so many things, and it kind of goes beyond that. I think is the ability to reconnect with everybody and find out, check in every year, and literally everybody is at ChannelCon, which is awesome. It's not technology specific, and I learn a lot, not just by sitting in the sessions, but catching up with people that you haven't talked to in a while. And I think even more so is meeting people that may not have been at the event before to bring some new perspectives too. I think they were seeing a lot of kind of the emerging technologies coming in this year, but also it comes back to things like data. What are they doing with it, with all of the information that's coming in and storing it, securing it, and comes back to the things we've been talking about for 10 years, but at the same point, it kind of has a new look and new opportunities. So,
well, it's funny you mentioned that. It's one of the real interesting parts of it is because you only have to be a CompTIA member in order for you to be able to come and exhibit there. So for exhibitors and for vendors, if you want to go to a trade show, you know, there's zero cost or a minimal cost to actually get in the door, set up, and be able to do this. And there's a lot of vendors that, of course, trying to, you know, to getting started, don't have a ton of money to do stuff, especially industry events. This is a phenomenal opportunity for them to get out there and do it. And, you know, I'll use Datto as an example because 10 years ago when Austin started the company, that was the first event he went to because it was free. And, you know, it was an opportunity for him to go in there. And then you fast forward years later and now we're one of the biggest sponsors there. And you start looking around the room and you start thinking, you know, which one's the next Datto here? And because there is, like, I don't know about you, Brian, but I walked the showroom floor there and there's probably about 30 or 40 vendors I've never heard of before that were there, all relevant, all trying to bring some MSP offering to market. But this is kind of like the real bleeding edge of where everything is going. And I think even what you referenced there, a lot of it was around security. So, you know, obviously we can start seeing where the trend is going to go.
Yeah, and you wonder who's going to be the next Austin McCord.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's only one of those guys. I'll tell you that. Thank God, too.
I love that you always recognize the new companies, Rob. I think that's always been just a special component of the way that you go about business, because you tell people to look around and learn what's new. Did anything stick out to you, especially in the security arena, in view of today's mega issues, I suppose I'm going to put it? It just keeps growing and growing, doesn't it? Some of these problems. Did anything stick out to you, or what sort of commentary do you have around some of the new attacks we're really facing?
But it's interesting. The security is definitely a conversation, and we're all hearing and seeing and telling that story. I think we're all still trying to figure out as a channel how to make money with it. Who are the winners going to be? Who are the losers going to be? How does the MSP fit into all this? So I think there's still a lot of like kind of awkward dancing going on right now. I think we all know that at some point in time we're going to master it, but we're trying to figure out what it's going to look like. And we go through phases like this. Cloud was similar years ago, and then even further than that, it was moving into the even mobility and stuff like that. So just trying to figure out where all this is gonna go and where's the opportunity, and security is definitely going to be that. I think what was interesting at CompTIA specifically was we weren't just talking about security from desktop, laptop, server, cloud. Like, the security was extending well beyond traditional avenues that MSPs have traditionally played in. So there was a lot of conversations around IoT, as much as we're all trying to define that and figure out ways to make money. And I know organizations like IotSSA, for example, are making huge strides and kind of one of the leaders in doing this. But then, you start talking about other emerging technologies like 5G, like drones and all this type of stuff. And immediately I roll my eyes and think, God, I really don't want to be talking about this, because we have problems today we need to worry about, as opposed to how an MSP is going to be able to position, sell, and service a drone in the future. But then let's think about it and at least start having these conversations. So when the 5 years comes and guess what, it is a real thing, then maybe we should be talking about it. And there's a lot of examples of things that were really, really hot technologies years ago that never came to fruition. The key is knowing, or at least being aware of all of them, so that we have the opportunity to be on top of it when it does, or if it does become a thing. So that's kind of really cool. But again, to bring it back to the security angle, it wasn't just security of what we're doing today; it's security of everything that's coming down the pipe as well. A perfect example, if you guys want a perfect example, because I was sat on a panel there, and you want to talk about the Internet of Things, and we start talking about security. Pampers is working on a smart diaper. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It literally has a pack on the back of the baby's diaper, and it'll alert the parent as to when the diaper needs to be changed via a mobile app. Fantastic idea, right? Especially if diapers are bloody expensive, and you don't necessarily want to go in there until you have to go in there. So why wouldn't a smart diaper make sense? Well, then the question is, okay, great. So Pampers is thinking about this, but are they thinking about security around what happens if somebody hacks, the diaper, gets in through the Wi-Fi network? There's little stupid things like that. And, as a layman, when it comes to technology, somebody's going to think, well, that's dumb. Nobody's going to do that. But we know numerous examples through IoT of ways that people exploit devices that are running around these networks and hacking them. Why not diapers? So, it's kind of like interesting little conversations and things that we're not thinking of like that.
When we talk about unprotected endpoints, yeah, that's not one you usually think about. It's an interesting one.
I read that a few weeks ago, and I was in Australia at the time, and I mentioned it during my presentation just to see if it would resonate. And one of the MSPs said, "They're going to see all your shit." I'm like, yeah, probably.
We were talking with someone last week about toaster, IoT connected toaster, and it pulls in, the weather. So it'll put like the sunshine if it's going to be sunny today, and the temperature, so that what's happening. When you get your toast buttered in the morning, you don't have to read the paper or get online. You know what it is.
Meanwhile, somebody's exploiting that connection and hacking into your banking information. Awesome.
Yeah.
But hey, it looks sunny today.
Somewhere in a third world country, they're hacking your toaster. Yeah.
So
right.
Sounds like you saw some excellent things, bringing it sort of back down to earth, as it were. Looking at today, right, and we're faced with this horrible issue with Dorian, which is obviously all over the news. Tell us a bit. I know that obviously a lot of people do know about the Datto disaster recovery team, but a lot of people don't. Do you want to just talk about that a little bit and how you address
Yeah,
that? Fabulous.
that's awesome. And yeah, and thanks for bringing it up. I mean, because it is something that is, it's something we're very, very proud of. It's not something that we brag about, obviously, because these are situations where people are going through extremely difficult times, and it's a very small part of the IT community, but it is a part of the IT community. Those that live down in, you know, Hurricane Alley there, and every year we're having to deal with more and more of these actual storms, and you know, these are opportunities. As much as it's a very, very painful time for a lot of people, these are opportunities for MSPs to demonstrate why people are paying them for their services. You know, we're paying you to take care of us. We're paying you to make sure that we're up and going, and you know, really part of the community. And the fact of downtime is for a business, as much as they might be going through a disaster, and other things are coming to mind, like safety of your family and everything like that. When you need to get back online to be able to service your ultimate customers, to be able to get back online and be able to continue to feed your families and feed your employees' families and stuff, you know, these are the times when an MSP can shine. And as time goes on, that technology piece is getting more and more important. We do this without a lot of fanfare because we don't want to seem like we're ambulance chasers. But one of the things that we do is we have what's called our DRT, our disaster recovery team. We are based out of Connecticut, and as a result, we have the ability to drive pretty much everywhere geographically in North America. What happens during these storms, and we've been doing this for about 3 or 4 years now, is we have a big truck and we pack that full of equipment, hardware, and we go down to these locations where people are being hit. So our team right now, I just actually checked on them. They're south of Atlanta right now, still trying to find where the biggest kind of impact is happening, and then we'll go into that town. We'll work with local partners in those towns, and what we'll do is we'll replace any devices that have been destroyed. We'll obviously virtualize as many places that we can to get people up and going. Because we got into the networking space not that long ago, we have the ability to set up Wi-Fi networks and at least give people internet access. You know, that's kind of one of the lowest hanging fruit problems is how do you just connect with your family to be able to say everything's okay, or I need help, or, you know, be able to make a phone call or look at the internet to see what's going on. So, you know, so for us, it's a combination of giving access to a whole bunch of people. We do it for shelters and everything like that, on top of supporting our partners throughout this time where it's hardware replacements or virtualization support. So it's a truck full of techs with a whole bunch of equipment that go down right into the storm and try to help people out as much as we possibly can. And we obviously do it at no charge. Any equipment that we use is left there for about 3 months at no charge. And then, you know, following up afterwards. Our goal is to make our partners look like heroes, and this is just one little service that we actually do, and are quite humble about doing it.
Right. So Rob, I was just looking at some of the numbers this morning, which are kind of staggering from Hurricane Dorian. You've got over 147,000 without power in North Carolina so far, and I know right now it's just over there. More than 270,000 in South Carolina right now. Florida and Georgia, it's similar numbers. And I won't even mention Bermuda, because Bermuda's, you know, it's just devastating what's happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to your point, you know, there's a lot of things that are important, you know, saving lives and doing that stuff first. And your team is doing phenomenal work. That's really great that you have that on-site team. With a disaster that's, you know, basically up and down the East Coast, or it will be by the time it's done. What things are you doing in Connecticut? I know you've got the on-site team, but how are you kind of facilitating making sure the partners that are up and down the East Coast are well supported?
So this actually starts well before the actual storm. Once it starts formulating, once we start seeing that this is a possibility, we start informing and giving assets to our partners in the regions that are potentially going to be hit, so that they can start preparing their end users for, here's what we need to do. And there's still too many stories, Brian, about people grabbing a server on their way out of the office kind of thing when a storm is about to hit, or a tornado or anything like that, which is, in these days, it's kind of ridiculous. You don't need to be doing those types of things. So a lot of it comes down to education. A lot of it comes down to awareness, and we give and help our partners with those assets. And we do call them proactively and give them these assets so that they can be communicating the messaging to their ultimate end users to go, look, I'm here, everything is good, we've got everything, we've taken extra backups, we're going to take backups right up to the point when we can't anymore, so we make sure that we've got the last good image, so we have all the data, you don't need to worry about this, don't grab your server and run out of the office, you don't need to worry about that kind of idea. So that's where, a lot of that comes in as far as supporting our actual community. Obviously, on top of that, we do allow our partners to virtualize at no charge, which is something that we've always done historically. We're proactively watching this, so as it comes up the East Coast, because as well as I do, sometimes this thing, can even skip and come all the way up. And we dealt with Sandy here in Connecticut and New York and New Jersey not that long ago. So, it's no longer just a Florida, Carolina problem. It's something that we all kind of need to be thinking about and whatnot. So constantly watching that, constantly staying with our partners and helping them find ways in which they can continue to support their communities and continue to support their ultimate end users throughout this whole thing. So that, again, comes through education. It comes through marketing materials that they can use where they can send out and say, and as much as you don't want to necessarily leverage this as an opportunity to sell more stuff, but we do give our MSPs some content where they can go to end user customers of theirs and go, look, something's bad's about to happen. I have the ability to help you here. Let me help you. Let me get you through this, and then we can talk about what this meant after the fact. And of course, these are all no charge services that we actually do. On top of that, we supplement our support team throughout this, because obviously you're going to get more calls. The calls are going to be beyond the 9 to 5, Monday to Friday hours. We usually do work, and when we actually do work 24/7, 365. However, in times like this, when these things come to shore, we'll supplement our support staff so nobody's waiting. We set up a hotline. In essence, it's a disaster line specifically where you are going through this disaster. I'm in the middle of it. I need help now. So you kind of skip the queue for all the usual stuff. So there's a number of things that we do in an effort to try to add more value to what the MSP is offering to their ultimate end user, especially in these scenarios, because ultimately it's disaster recovery, and that's what the end user is paying for.
Fantastic. And I think we can all agree it's a lot more than just disaster recovery with Datto. I do recall them, some of the fantastic team taking actual supplies as well, food and necessities, which I don't know, warms the heart. I think it's brilliant. Moving slightly away, what can you talk about in the new security space, Rob, as far as how Datto's always obviously been incredibly security focused, excellent backups, and that sort of bringing the whole thing together. What can you tell us that's going on lately with your security focus?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, like we've all spent a ton of time talking about security, where security's going, the opportunity for MSPs to sell security, and we've all been talking about malware and hackers and the threats and all these other things that are kind of fueling the business of managed services these days, and it's kind of the next generation of IT that we're all thinking about. There was about a year and a half ago a pretty serious warning that Homeland Security and the FBI both put out here in the U.S. market, warning MSPs that they were going to be attacked. And if you think about a hacker, you can go and target a specific large business, spend some time doing some research on it, finding new ways to get into those actual environments, but that's kind of like a one single attack. How do I get into the small businesses that are out there? And because the MSPs are now owning pretty much all of the IT for small businesses, the hackers are looking at an MSP and going, well, you represent 20, 30, 40, 50 end user companies. Why don't I just go after you? And then that spreads out to all of your end users. So we are seeing hackers exploiting MSPs. It's happening through different technologies that they're using within their environments. And hackers are getting in, and they are ultimately able to do things like delete backups and cloud backups and cause havoc and deliver ransomware and steal data and steal personal information and in some cases steal actual money. It's something, again, that we got warned about a year and a half ago. We all did as a community. It's something that is coming to fruition, and I'm seeing more and more of that in the last couple of months. So more recently, I've kind of been changing my messaging, and instead of focusing on how we're all going to make money in security, it's like, hold on, let's take a step back and secure what we've got before we start talking about how we're all going to secure our futures. Because if you are, and unfortunately I've seen quite a few of these the last couple of weeks, if you are an MSP that is exploited, just think about this for a moment, where a hacker has gotten into your environment, it has corrupted your environment, and it has used your systems and your processes to deliver something like ransomware to all of your end users. And now all of your end users are locked down, and now you not only have to recover all of these sites at once, which is very, very time consuming, but at the same time you have to explain why your own systems were not secure enough and why they should continue to trust you and do business with you. And there's some legitimate, long-term, very good MSPs that are in risk of going out of business as a result of this. And it's something that nobody in this community wants to see. So, you know, there's a bunch of things that we're recommending. There's a bunch of things that we want people just to be. It's basically right now it's more of an awareness thing. First of all, you are targeted. You are being attacked. A lot of people think we're in the small business space. We're in small town USA or Canada or wherever, and nobody's going to pay attention to us. Not only that, but we use technologies that nobody's ever heard of before because they're exclusive to the managed services space, like a Datto, for example. Well, you're fooling yourself. They do know who you are. They are targeting on small business. They don't care what town that you're in. They don't care and what technologies you're using, but they are fully aware of all the RMMs, all the PSAs, all the backups, and how to exploit those technologies in order to get in. So what's an MSP to do? Well, number one thing, obviously, and it sounds stupid that we're even having this conversation, but two-factor authentication is critical. Two-factor authentication needs to be on everything. And I'll give you a perfect example where we have a partner of ours who has 2FA on everybody's login with the exception of the admin. And the reason they didn't put it on the admin was because that is used by multiple people and it was too difficult to manage. But that is the one that got exploited by the actual hacker to the point where they came in and did it and deployed. It was ransomware to 35 end user sites. It's been about 2.5 weeks now. They've recovered about half of them. This is where common sense needs to come into play here. Like, yes, it's a pain in the ass and nobody likes doing it. I myself had problems getting onto this podcast because of my 2FA. So, you know, it's things like that, you know, they're causing havoc in our lives right now, but the consequences of not having it are significant, absolutely significant. So it sounds like a dumb thing. We're all recommending it to our customers, but take a look at your own practices, because if you're not going to take security seriously, you shouldn't be in this space, especially not in today. There's too many things, too many people, too many salaries and livelihoods that are at risk here. Awareness obviously is really key as well, making sure that you are aware that, you know, you are being attacked. You know, get familiar with how they're doing it. Read the articles that are being published by pretty much every media outlet out there right now as to what's happening in the actual market. And then I think the other thing too is just making sure the technologies you're using, making sure the vendors that you're working with are taking this as serious as well. Call them up and ask them, what are you doing? What's the message from your CISO in regards to this? Datto, for example, we hired a CISO on probably about 2.5 years ago, and his job is not to figure out how to make MSPs better at selling security. His job is literally to poke holes in our own environments and our own technologies to find the flaws and the problems. And when he first joined, yeah, there was a laundry list of red flags that we had to do. We're very fortunate that we did this at the time that we did, because you know, we've been able to close a lot of those gaps, significant gaps, and we openly talk about this. Our CISO now these days is actually, he's on Reddit, he's on Facebook, he's answering all the questions that MSPs are having when they get into these threads. He's going out and visiting not end user sites, but MSP sites to help them go through these things. So, you know, these are the types of things that your vendor should be doing for you, and I think you got to call them to task. It's not always the cheapest product that's the best. We know this. We know this through history. So let's go and find what each of the vendors that you're working with are doing to help protect you from this nonsense that's actually happening out there, because it's a problem. It's a pretty significant problem. So stay up to date on your patches, get your two-factor authentication, call your vendors out, ask them for help and support, ask them what they are doing, and then just create general awareness of yourself and and the problems that we're actually seeing out there today.
Do you think some of the problems are, I know we look sometimes at a vulnerability, like we discovered a vulnerability and think of that as almost as a failure. In the MSP space, they almost have to look at that as the failure is not the vulnerability. The failure is if you get compromised, and going in and identifying those more proactively. So looking at threat hunting and all of the more proactive services that maybe recommending with clients and utilizing all of those things first and foremost in their own businesses. And we're seeing more of that, but I think we still look at vulnerabilities as, oh, I found a problem that was in here, and as a failure, instead of, yeah, yay, we found it, we're taking care of it, we're going to make sure it doesn't cause problems for us or our clients.
Yes, and it's an interesting debate because once you take that and first of all get your own house in order, and when you can actually, and again, let's turn this into a sales opportunity, because what you can do is you can look at what I did with my own business and take that to your ultimate end user or a prospect and go, here's how seriously I am taking this. When you're talking to other MSPs, or take a look at your current MSP, are they taking it this seriously? The other impact that this has, Brian, and we got to look at this even from a bigger and wider community perspective, is if the end user community, like we've all done a very good job at getting end users to outsource IT to us. Okay, we've all done a phenomenal job at doing that. What happens if the MSP starts getting blamed for this, and all of a sudden all the bad press is don't outsource your IT? Because if you outsource your IT, your vulnerabilities are now increased, because now there's a targeted attack from an actual hacker. Whereas if you just maintain your small infrastructure with an in-house IT guy, you're off people's radars. That's the last thing we want. So even as a community, we can all suffer as a result of a couple of bad actors or a couple of non-compliant MSPs that didn't pay enough attention to this. So, the ramifications of this are actually significant for an entire industry, not just for a couple of small businesses. I think there's another play here, which is insurance as well. I think you absolutely must have to look at insurance around this, because you do not want to be in the situation where you're out of business as a result. So I would highly suggest that you're also looking at cybersecurity insurance, not just for yourselves, but there's opportunity for your end users as well.
I agree, and in fact, we were actually just talking about that in another podcast, which is fascinating because you think how far this sort of thing has come. Talking a little bit more about, I love the get your house in order from an MSP standpoint, because then you really do have solid footing to walk into your clients and show them. And it sounded a bit pedestrian, but can you talk a bit more to that, Rob, about how an MSP can walk into a client, be them a new one or one they've already got, to really walk through some of these processes about how to show them? I almost call it sort of mystery shopping of security, how to show them about phishing emails, how to talk about social engineering and that sort of thing. Can you talk to how you encourage the MSPs to train their clients?
Yeah, it's actually something we're just starting to talk about. It's not. I haven't got anything fully baked yet, but these are kind of the things that we're constantly thinking forward on. How do we get our partners to actually utilize this? And literally, I was at a trade show. I was doing a panel last week. Where was I? In Los Angeles, and this came up, and it was an actual. I had a couple of partners that were on there because there's obviously a hot topic. It was not the topic of what we were going to talk about on the panel, but we actually ended up going that route only because of how serious this is in our community right now. And it was a question from the audience. One of the MSPs jumped in there and asked, hey, how can I turn, like, I've taken care of my shop. I've done everything that I need to do. I have 2FA everywhere. I pen test my stuff. I work with organizations like Blackpoint and Huntress and all these, like Duo and all these organizations to make sure that my house is solid. I've spent extra dollars getting to make sure that my house is solid. How can I leverage that now that I'm seeing other MSPs being exploited as a result? And it's funny because we all kind of had this moment where it's like, well, wait a minute, maybe there is an opportunity here, right, that we haven't been thinking of. So I think there's a few things. I think obviously doing a little bit of education and think about the questions. If you're an end user, what would you recommend an end user ask an MSP about security? About security of their own environment? And I would come up with a list of those questions, and I would, if I was an MSP, I would come up with a list of here are the answers to the questions that I have done but give that list of questions for them to be able to go and ask either other MSPs or their own MSP and see how those answers come back. Because I think if you can do that, what you'll do is you'll potentially find some red flags and therefore an opportunity to go in there and provide a better service. Same thing that you would do if you were asking a vendor. What are the questions you want to ask a vendor before I start doing business with you, or we're going to continue to do business with you if you can answer these questions around security? I think it's exactly the same thing. So yes, you can exploit that to become an opportunity, but to be honest, as a community, don't we want the MSPs to be absolutely secure about this to the point where we're comfortable, you know, that they're going to go and represent themselves well and do well and continue to push this community forward. So I don't have anything, I wish I did, Tanya, that was fully baked that I could give you to say, hey, here's the magic bullet. But I think we're all going to, and I think there's an opportunity to work on that. And I think you're going to start potentially seeing some opportunities coming around that. And if not, I'll do it myself, but just give me a month to do it. So.
Sounds like a good resource to have at IotSSA too.
It does, yeah, it does.
That's
good idea, Tanya.
We should work with, but
good stuff.
Yeah, that's all good. Unfortunately, Rob, it looks like time flies too fast, man, when we're doing these things. I wish we had like 2 hours, but you know, we like to keep it succinct so the MSPs, you know, get back to work because they got a lot of work to do, especially for the East Coast this week.
And who wants to listen to us for 2 hours, honestly, other than ourselves?
Well, no, you and Tanya maybe, but yeah. No, any last thoughts? I know we've covered, you know, we've gone from ChannelCon to disaster recovery all the way to MSP security today, which is great. So we appreciate it. But any final thoughts you want to leave the audience with today?
I've got, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. I mean, obviously, you know, we've got these disasters coming through. So I think the most important thing is just, you know, stay safe, stay dry, you know, and let's keep moving on those. Start thinking about security. Obviously, we've talked a lot about that. Sign up for ChannelCon 2020 for sure. Phenomenal event, and the more people that we can get from our community to go out there. There's a million other things that we're working on, not just from a product perspective, but I'm talking about from an education perspective. We're gearing up for DattoCon Paris, which is the largest European MSP event that is happening in Paris in mid-October, and it's an English conference, even though it's in Paris, and it's an international conference, even though it's in Europe. So we'll have probably close to 1,000 MSPs, probably about 1,200, 1,300 people out in Paris for the MSP space. So if you're interested in talking more and seeing what's going on in some other regions, it's a beautiful place to be. You probably have close to about 100 Americans out there, which would be awesome. So lots of cool stuff on the go, and yeah, just stay smart.
I think you have a lot of people volunteering to be on your event staff between San Diego and Paris. It sounds like
a fun ride. It's a fun ride. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very glad you brought that up. I was going to prompt you otherwise, and definitely encourage MSPs all over the world to pop down to Paris to DattoCon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's shaping up to be a really, really cool event. I've got some phenomenal speakers. Content is new. We do 2 DattoCons a year, obviously the one in the States and then the one in Europe. But the content is completely different. We always make sure that we've got new things to talk about, and it's not just a regurgitation of whatever we did in San Diego a few months ago. And then of course Atlanta rolls around in 2020, which we're already working pretty hard on, so that should be fun as well.
So Rob, with just circling back to the disaster recovery too, for any of your partners or prospective partners that are interested in the disaster recovery services, I know they can go to the website and probably look for this, but is there a specific place to find resources within Datto?
Yeah, if you're an existing Datto partner, just call your account manager. They've already got it. Take a look through your emails, because we've been firing off emails to all the affected areas in regards to this. As far as where our DRT team is, they're looking for opportunities to help. Don't hesitate to reach out and ask. There's no ask that is too small for this team. And they will come in there and they'll help you guys out. They'll do it all in your MSP name to help you guys look like heroes. So yeah, absolutely take advantage of that. I would just contact your account manager. Otherwise, yeah, datto.com. DRT is the name. Or if you even just plug in Hurricane Dorian and Datto, yeah, you'll find lots of resources there as well. And if you're not a partner, you don't have to be a Datto partner to take advantage of this. Our goal is to help the entire community. Not just our own partners. So if there's anything we can do for any MSP don't hesitate to ask. And that can come through data storage, it can come through data protection, it can come through Wi-Fi networking, access, whatever it is that you need. And again, none of this comes at a charge. We do all of this just to help the community. And then when the dust settles, just return the hardware to us or keep it, start paying for it. It's pretty simple process.
Well, that is awesome. I have to say that, I think, as an industry. So kudos for all the work that your team's doing. But
we're blessed that we have the opportunity to do it. So
great. Fantastic. Well, as always, I want to thank you, Rob, for joining us today. Thank you, Tanya, for joining us.
Fantastic. Lots of fun. Thanks, Rob. Such good stuff.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well, good. So I'd also like to encourage those of you who take a couple extra minutes after this and check out IotSSA.com. You'll see great cybersecurity content and a lot of great resources for you to work on your own cybersecurity practice if you're an MSP. Thanks again, and please have a fantastic and highly profitable and safe